Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast. And joining me is Rockets expert Frank with Rockets Chop Shop. You can watch his video breakdowns on the Rockets Chop Shop YouTube channel. Always great to see you, Frank. How's it going?
Doing well, man. I always get caught off guard when you say Rockets expert, but I appreciate it.
Well,
I was like, you talking about me or somebody else?
we all count as a little bit of a Rockets expert. We even followed it for that long. But hey, they're the 8th seed right now as we sit here early Tuesday evening. We're recording this before Tuesday night's games. The first 7 teams kind of bunched within 4 games at this point. Then there's a drop off to the next 5 who are within a game and a half of each other and battling for the play-in. The Grizz, I took them off. They're a cross-off with Morant's injury. They're not even in that second group. So, Frank, which 2 teams aren't making the play-in from that group? The Rockets, Lakers, Suns, Warriors, and Jazz. And I guess the Jazz are probably one of your 2 that aren't making it because you figure at some point they're going to start selling guys off.
I think that's a great question. I think the Jazz, we've seen what they did last year. Soon as they were doing good, when it was time for the deadline to come, they kind of shaved off a lot of the players that helped them to get to where they were. So I think that's more of the same this year. I think they've won like 10 of their last 13 games or something like that in the last. So that's going to be an interesting dilemma for them since they do have really good players. I think the real teams that could possibly leapfrog the Rockets would be the Lakers, the Warriors, and the Suns. Man, it's going to be tough, bro. And I think it's going to lead into what we're going to talk about later on. I think the Rockets, I said on my last video, this team is viable. And what I mean by that is that they're viable if they push the right buttons, make the right adjustments, and bring in some depth help. I think they have a good chance of making the play-in and possibly the playoffs, but it's really going to be predicated on that. Now, if I had to pick a team that I'm going to exclude out, I'm going to go with the Warriors. I'm a big Warriors fan. I know, contrary to a lot of Houstonians, I actually appreciate the run that they've been on over these years, building it from the ground up. But, man, they have the telltale signs. I don't know if you see this, Robert, of a team that's on its last leg. And there is a point where you have to accept that it's over. And I think for them, they are reaching that point. I don't know. What do you think about what the Warriors are looking like this season? Not to go off on a side trail here.
I just feel like you've got so much invested in Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and Andrew Wiggins, those 3 guys. Yeah. That's a lot of money. Unless they're willing to trade one of those guys, I'm sure they're willing to trade Wiggins. I don't know if they're willing to trade those other 2 guys, but unless you're willing to trade those guys and then you're willing to give up some real draft capital to get somebody back to take on those contracts, I mean, I just don't see how you get out of this and sort of change the course because there's just too many guys that just are just guys after Steph Curry right now.
And I totally agree. I think they have some real roster issues, some depth issues, some fit issues. So I don't think this is the year where they're going to shock everybody and go on some crazy run in the second half. So I think they probably fall out this year. I think they also have some cultural and some team dynamic things going on. You've seen the reports with Kuminga and talking about Steve Kerr may not be. So when I see stuff like that, I'm like, okay, that's not a cohesive unit. So I'm going to think that they're going to fall out. Honestly, think the battle is going to be between us, the Lakers, and the Suns. If I had to pick a team to exclude, I may have to let the Lakers go.
Well, we've already taken the Jazz out. So really that's, we've already got there's 3 teams for 3 spots now if you take out the Warriors.
Oh, so you're just taking out. Okay. Yeah. So, I think if the Jazz, honestly, if they wanted to, they could probably push it. I honestly think the Lakers also have a lot of issues with their team. Now, they just beat the Clippers, but, I think that LeBron, as great as he is, that defense does suffer a lot. And I think AD, he hasn't, as great as he is, they just don't have enough depth and talent to really compete. I like the Rockets. I really do. But I do think that our season could go one of 2 ways. We could either just kind of do what we're doing, which is win 3, lose 4, and just keep going like that and end up as a team that's on the outside looking in. I honestly believe Rafael Stone is the key player for this team. If he truly believes that he wants to make the playoffs this year, and we've heard that from Stone, from Tillman, from the coach, then what they do at the deadline is going to really determine that. And for me personally, I think it's almost mandatory that they actually make that push, not to go trade any of the, the key players away, but we have so many useless, I'm not going to call them useless. We have a lot of players that aren't playing. They're just wasted roster spots right now. And for a team that's young, you really want to rely on depth. And to me, the roster is constructed not in a way to really support a young up-and-coming team.
Yeah, but unless you're trading for somebody of great significance, the two guys that you're worried about getting hurt and maybe killing your chances are Van Vliet and Şengün. And I feel like there's a better chance that the Lakers lose Anthony Davis or LeBron James because of their history for a time period that really kills some of their hopes than it is for the Rockets. So to me, that's really a big difference. We're going to get to the trade deadline stuff in just a second because I do want to talk to you about that. But I've just got another elimination game for you because we haven't seen the Rockets at 100% in a while. Since then, we've got Amen and Cam who are playing really good rotational minutes, or at least decent rotational minutes. And assuming the starting lineup stays the same, Udoka now has 6 potential bench players. And if I made Frank, you the coach, the head coach, which one of these two, or which one or two, I should say, of these 6 guys is out of your rotation? And if you want to make a 10-man rotation, if you want to make a 9-man rotation, however you want to do it, but you've got Tari, Cam, Amen, Uncle Jeff, Jay Sean, and Aaron Holiday. Which guy or guys is out for your rotation?
Oh, man, that's a tough one. That is incredibly tough. And honestly, I think the furthest we'll go is 10-man rotation. So we're assuming the starting 5 is what it is. So that leaves us with the names. That's 6 names you gave us. One person has to be cut out of this for me, because I'm going to go through, I think Amen and Cam together. You've seen some of the synergy they have together. You see what Cam Whitmore provides. One of, I think I don't know where I saw this stat somewhere, that he's number 6 in the NBA in points per minute. He's instant offense, even though like he does have a lot of boneheaded plays. But to me, if you had started playing him at the start of the season, by now those would have been mitigated. So I think these are just like basically this is his rookie. The start of his rookie year started a few games ago. So I can live with bad rotations and things like that. Amen Thompson, to me, he's in a lineup. He provides defense. I know the shooting isn't great. His ball handling, he has a lot of deficiencies right now in his game. But prior to his injury, he was already carving out a niche as that kind of a wing defender. And I think he's a pretty good defender for a young guy. And I think that's going to keep you on the court. And he pushes pace, which I appreciate on those second units. There were some lineups with him when Tate and Tari and some of those guys were out there that are really intriguing. And I think him and Jalen play fairly well together. So those 2 young guys, I want them. And also, you also want to develop, because we're not good enough to the point where you ignore development like the Golden State Warriors, as we spoke on. We actually want to see some of these guys get reps because we're going to need them and we have some decisions to make. So I think they're going to stay. Tari Eason, obviously, Tari is one of our best players. There's some arguments he should start. Between Holiday, Jayshawn Tate, and Jeff Green, I'm not a big fan of Aaron Holiday and Jayshawn Tate. I'm just going to be transparent with your audience.
Yeah.
Aaron Holiday, to me, is one of the more frustrating players to watch, but I understand what he brings. I think if he is toned down to be a off-ball shooter, a catch-and-shoot player that gets some on-ball reps, he is actually one of our better shooters, and he does impact the game. The defense has slipped a little bit. I just don't like his shot selection. I think he plays a role that we don't need. We don't need him to be James Harden. I think that's what he thinks he's in his head. And then Jeff Green, Jeff Green is played out of his mind. I don't like that he has to play this many minutes, but he is a positive when he's on the court. So that leaves one Jayshawn Tate. Robert, I'm not going to lie to you, man. I'm about had my quota for Jayshawn Tate for this season already. The dude is small. He's undersized at pretty much every matchup. He's slow. He's bad at getting around screens. He can't shoot. Not a great rebounder. Aside from the occasional post-ups and the once in a blue moon three-pointer from the corner he hits, I really don't see any value except for maybe some things he does as far as culture in the locker room that he brings. And he could do that from the bench. The defense has slipped a lot. Like, he gets beat by guards. He gets beat by wings. When he gets posted up, he's too small. Guys shoot over him. Guys are dribbling past him. He offers spacing issues with the starting lineup when you put him in there with Şengün and Jalen Green and Jabari on some nights. I just think that if I had to cut a guy out the rotation, it would have to be Tate. And honestly, to me, I'm trying to get him out at the deadline because I think he's worn out his talent here in Houston.
Absolutely. I agree with everything you said 100%. I was a skeptic prior to this. I felt like he was the most overrated player from Rockets fans in a lot of ways, except for a guy that maybe we're going to mention here in a little bit. But I just felt like he's very overrated as a player. And I agree with you, defensively, very overrated. I just, he's 30 years old almost, and he's still committing the same dumb fouls that he was committing. Should have got out of his system about 5 years ago. Even in international play, that should have been gone. But he's been doing it since he came to Houston, and he just can't seem to get rid of that stuff. So, yeah, I'm out on Jay-Sean. And, Aaron Holiday, I see what you're saying about Aaron Holiday. His floater needs to be thrown in the trash can and just flushed down the toilet or whatever. But he's one of those guys that if he's got one of those nights where he's on, I'm just like, leave him out there. If he's off, he plays his few minutes in the first half, and then maybe as long as you've got Amen and Cam available, those guys take care of things, any bench minutes in the second half. And let's get to Cam, because everybody, I'm sure, is dying to talk about him. And I'm just wondering, from your perspective, is Cam Whitmore a more talented version of Jalen Green? And given rotation reps over the next couple of months, could he be better than Jalen by April?
Man, that's a hard question, because it's really hard to assess Cam because we have such a small sample size. I mean, there were stretches in Jalen's rookie year where he looked like one of the future best scorers in the NBA. Obviously, I think one advantage Cam has that Jalen probably will never have is the physical stature. And that goes a long way in the NBA. You look at guys like Anthony Edwards and the immediate impact he has as a scorer, as a two guard in the league. A lot of it is not really just his skill, but it's also his frame. That big frame and the leaping ability, the athleticism, it does allow you to get away with a lot more lack of skill stuff than a Jalen Green. And I think what Jalen suffers from is that not only is he undersized, his skill set isn't as diverse as you want it for a guy that's slight of frame. You think of slight of frame guards, you're thinking of Tyrese Maxey, you're thinking of Steph Curry, young Steph Curry when he came to the league. You're thinking of some of these smaller guys that, because they're smaller, they had to craft other aspects of their game to really make up for that size issue. And I'm not sure what Jalen Green's development path was, but that was something that he really missed in his ascension to the NBA. So as far as Cam, could he be more talented? Of course. I think they're very similar in as far as their games. I think Cam probably is a better shooter right now than Jalen is, which is a very low bar. I think Cam is a better finisher than Jalen Green right now as a 19-year-old. I think Cam is, if you give him enough reps in a season, I think he can catch up to Jalen Green defensively, because Cam, I think really the difference between them is experience.
Yes.
So if you ask me, if I give Cam Whitmore a year of experience, can he catch up to Jalen Green? Yeah, that's a very strong possibility, because when it comes to physical stature, he's already ahead of him. I think skill-wise, they're almost even. Jalen just has reps, and that's the difference between him and Cam Whitmore right now is reps. I would love to say that, no, I can't see it. But I mean, he doesn't really leave us a lot to see from there. I would say Jalen's a better passer than Cam right now. And I would say that Jalen is probably better on some aspects of defense, screen navigation, and things like that. But when it comes to overall game, I'm going to give Jalen the edge right now, just because he plays a bigger role and we get to see a lot more of him rather than 10 minutes where you just bring him off the bench. But as time goes on, like you said, by April, I think that's in play where Cam Whitmore is performing better than Jalen Green.
Yeah, no question about it. I agreed with everything you said. And I mean, just, as far as offensive skills, we've been waiting for Jalen to add something in his game over 3 years. And just to give you an example, we saw Cam the other night throw a 360 spin move on a defensive player. I mean, where has that been from Jalen? Cam is light years better at finishing around the basket, not just a little bit. He's light years better at finishing around the basket than Jalen. I mean, him getting rid of stuff the dumb stuff. And I heard Udoka on the post-game show the other night where he was talking about the game in Miami, and, Cam went into Kevin Love not thinking, okay, that guy's one of the best charge takers in the league, when it would have just been a simple, maybe Euro step or something like that to get around him, just to get all those bugs out of his system. And if he's a quick learner, and if he's going to be a great player, we're going to see that as the minutes increase. Don't you think, Frank? I mean, pretty quickly.
That is exactly. I made a tweet saying that this is something I'd heard from Daryl Morey. Basically, what you do is, if you look at a player who in small frequency is very efficient, and as you scale them up in their frequency and their efficiency stays, then that's the markings of a star, right? As you give them a bigger role, they maintain. Şengün had a little bit of that. You see when Şengün was in, he was a efficiency darling. All the analytics popped off the charts. And then even when he would get stretches where they used him more, that stuff stayed the same. He just accounted more winning stats. And I want to see that from Cam Whitmore, to see maybe an injury occurs where he gets an extended role. Does that points per minute uphold when he's getting 20, 30 minutes in a game? Does that defense improve? If it does, then this discussion is going to be very moot in about a season, because what he does provide for the Rockets is a Jalen Green insurance and leverage for Jalen's contract year going into next summer, where, like if they said that, hey, Jalen, you know what, test the free agency market. They have a guy that's waiting in the wings that's on a rookie scale salary that they would probably feel comfortable saying, okay, we don't want to pay him that, or if Jalen's mad or whatever about not getting a big contract, they'll just let him just go. Hopefully we get a world where both of them are good and we can have the good problem of having too much talent. But I think Whitmore, he's shown a lot. But as you know, with these young guys, you just got to give it time, because, there's a lot of rookies that show good and you give them more roles and they kind of fall off. So we'll see.
Yeah, get in the comments. We want to hear from you guys about it. I know, I'm somebody that's been very critical of Jalen for a long time. And I know people don't like me because of that. And people are, hate on me because, I have something personal against. It's not personal against Jalen. It's just kind of where I think he is right now. And just for what it's worth, you were talking about it, Frank, his per 36, and they're starting to call him per 36. The broadcasters are 27 points, 8 rebounds, 2.4 steals, which is like something you'll never see from Jalen. 43% from 3, 54% from the field. Given a lot of that has been in trash time, but it's starting to show up the same when he's given real minutes too. And I'm pretty confident Cam's a much better prospect than Jalen, perhaps better now, period. I mean, that's, and I know some of the things, some of his downfalls, as far as Frank said, I agree with, but I think that stuff gets out. That's the bugs in the system that gets out, you would hope, in the first month or two, if he's as good as everybody thinks he can be. And I've gone from 90% out on Jalen as an all-star to 100% out. But I'll stop right there, because Frank, I do want to talk a little trade deadline with you, because it's only a month away. We're less than a month away right now. Which position is your highest priority, and is there a number 2 priority for you?
Right now, the positions that's the highest priority, it used to be, I think we talked about this before, getting a backup center for those non-Şengün minutes. And I still think that's a very high priority. The way I'm going to look at it is 1A and 1B. I think right now, in my opinion, the Rockets need to get some shooting on the team. We are, especially on our second units, on nights where you're playing, especially against offensively geared teams that have other shooters, it's really hard to win games in the NBA strictly off of scrappy defense. So offensively, we have a lot that we lack. I think we're still in the bottom third of the league as an offensive team. I think our defense is good enough to get stops in key moments, especially in stretches in a game. But over these games that we struggle in, a lot of times is where the offensive team that we're facing, it has it going, we cannot answer. Our starting 5, when they're healthy, they're a decent offense, middle of the pack, above average defense. The bench units, it's really hit or miss with the shooting, because you think about the guys on the bench: Tate, Tari Eason, Amen Thompson, Jeff Green, Aaron Holiday. Aaron Holiday is a good shooter, but he's not going to light up the world. And the rest of the guys, other than that, I know if you look at them statistically, they're average, but there's a marked difference between a guy like, let's say, Jeff Green hitting 36% from 3, or somebody like Duncan Robinson hitting 36% from 3. There's differences there, because the attention the defense gives, Jeff Green is shooting a lot of open shots off a late contest because a lot of guys are clogging the paint. I want a guy that's going to draw players out of the paint, so Amen and Cam and even Şengün on certain lineups could get more space to operate in. As much as we rave about what Alperen Şengün can do, he is playing in a very tight phone booth right now with the amount of attention he's garnering in the paint. And a prime example of that was the Miami game yesterday.
Sure.
Teams are not being punished for literally putting 5 people in the paint and just daring our guys to shoot. I just want one player on the roster that you have to respect. And I think when I think of names, one name that I'm going to give you, Robert, is Bogdanovich from Atlanta. I think he is a good player that would offer some of that. He can shoot off the dribble, can shoot off movement. He can put the ball and dribble, come off the screens. I think we need that level of shot creation and ball movement shooting on the roster right now. And I think, if you look at his salary, he makes $18 million. You combine Oladipo and a guy like Jae'Sean Tate, and that should be something that you'd be able to make. It'll probably cost us maybe some seconds or something like that, maybe 2 or 3 seconds to get him.
But see, that's where Bogdanovich he's a darn good player, and you look at the plus minus on the Hawks, he's at the top of the list if I remember correctly, and that's such a good player. I don't know how they give him up for a second,
get him off of him
for second round pick. I just don't think second round picks are just enough to do it.
Last year's trade deadline, I think that was the year where a bunch of starting level 3 and D wings were going for second round picks. James Wiseman, I think it was 5 seconds that was able to get him, and he was a number 2 overall pick. I think with the especially for some of these teams that are trying to contend with the new CBA, and we discussed this, the value of having a later pick when your salary gets real tight nowadays, especially for contenders, maybe not for the Oklahoma Cities or for the Houstons right now, but if you're an Atlanta team with a coach that wants to win, players that want to win, you want to find guys in those early second round, late first round area, because you're not going to be able to get a $12 million kid to come in and sit behind Trae Young. So I think getting those, in my opinion, are still valuable. And I mean, Bogdanovich, he's good and I like him, but I don't think he's better than some of the players that we saw get moved around last season for seconds. So I still think there's a market for seconds, especially for prospective contenders. That's just my opinion.
I kind of feel like there's a lot of teams right now. There's so many teams that feel like they're in it and they have a shot, that are veteran teams, and they feel like their window is not that big. And, Bogdanovich is not an expiring contract. So spending a first on him makes sense for those teams because it's not like it's a rental either. Like a team like the Lakers, we just talked about them. I mean, that team's desperate for, somebody to help out the other guys offensively. They've got issues. And, Reeves is just, he's been good, but just not good enough as a third scorer for them consistently. I just feel like they could use a fourth guy even for that matter. And it's not just them. There's definitely other teams out there that could use a Bogdanovich. And it's weird because, this first round pick, that's another thing about it, Frank. This first round pick it's tough. It's a tough thing for Houston because it's a poor draft. I mean, let's not forget, this is a bad draft that the Rockets have a first round pick in. Now the Nets, if you look at the Nets, they're going to be like 9 or 10. Mm-hmm. So there's about a 20% chance that you're going to land in the top 4, but it's a top 4 that nobody's that confident in, but you could put on a top 3 protection or something like that to that first round pick. And if you're getting a 9 or 10 in this draft, that might be the equivalent of a late first rounder in another draft. So giving up a late first rounder for a Bogdanovich, it doesn't seem like that much of a big deal. And I mean, you could also maybe combine, get Capella and Bogdanovich, and it would be, I don't think you could quite match the salaries, but if you could find a team where you can combine 2 players, and I think I mentioned to you in a message, like, for instance, Daniel Gafford and Tyus Jones, somebody that can take some pressure off of Fred VanVleet. If you combine something like that, give up a first round pick, maybe it's worth it in a draft that nobody's all that fond of.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Capella part because you kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I think we can match the salaries. It would just require probably Jeff Green to be included, which,
Well, no, it's like, I mean, Capella makes
28 million, right?
Capella makes over 20 and what does Bogdanovich makes? He makes
18.
About 20.
So it's 18. So it's 28, 30 million.
That's 40.
38 million. So yeah, I think the most we can get up to is like 33 with the guys we currently have. The other player, I guess, would kind of address the backup center position. I would love for the Rockets to get us Kelly Olynyk. He also addresses the spacing issue to me and fits a position of need in the backup 5 rotation. You can put him at the 4. You can start him next to Şengün. He can play 5 for you if Şengün ever goes down. I think that's a player, but what I'm worried about with Kelly O is that a lot of contenders as well are going to be asking about him. Now, if you look at his contract, I actually think he's an expiring contract this season, only makes $12 million. So that could be just a straight up Tate type of move a 1-for-1, and you still have the ability to go get other players that could help you try to go forward. Now, I don't know what Danny Ainge, because he's a pretty, Danny Ainge is a pirate when it comes to making teams give up assets for things. I'm not sure what his asking price is, but I honestly think that if you just want to get a 1-year rental, I think that's a guy that second round picks should be able to do. Maybe Tate and one of our 3 million Boban or somebody like that to go out there in some seconds for Kelly O.
And don't forget Tate may be a value to another team. So he could pick up. You could do it into a 3-way. They could add a second round pick from some other team that might just want him as a back of the rotation guy. But I definitely agree with you. Olynyk and Capella are guys that I think you can do second round picks at this point. I think they waited too long on Capella. So, maybe they were asking too much this summer. The Rockets weren't interested. Now, the problem with Capella is you got him for next year. He's under contract. It's $20-something million. Could you get out of it if you had to? Could you use him in a combo trade, perhaps? So maybe you wouldn't be that tied down to him. But right now, he's a guy that's slipping a little bit. And that's good enough for a backup, maybe not good enough as a starter for them or somebody that they see moving forward. Daniel Gafford, I think, is going to take more than a second because he's under contract for 3 years and it's a good contract. The guy with the Wizards is another guy I'll throw out there. And also, I don't know if you would be interested in him, but Andre Drummond, I would assume, would be pretty cheap with the Bulls.
Yeah, that'd be a minimum guy. I think Drummond, I think that would be on my bottom list. I love Gafford. I think Gafford, as far as archetype-wise, would be another version of a center that I would love. Somebody that can give us a different look, rim protection, a little bit of a pick-and-roll threat on the lob that we don't have on the team right now. To your point about Tate's value in the open market, Tate also is he's a good contract. Honestly, he has $7 million next year, and it's the team option. So whoever you trade him to, you could use that as leverage to say, hey, this is a guy that can help your rotation. He can play in spot minutes, and it's really no cost to your cap sheet because he's an expiring next year. And if you want to just, if you like him, just keep him. If you want to trade him, that's a $7 million salary that you could use for future trades if you want to pivot out of a situation you're currently in. So I think for teams like, I was going to like the Lakers, not the Lakers because they have enough non-shooters, but those contenders that are kind of tight with their salaries, a player like Tate is valuable. Not only can he play, but he doesn't really hurt you in the long term.
Good locker room guy too, as well. And also, I'm just curious, I mentioned the first round pick. I know everybody just looks at first round picks as like gold or whatever when they're in the lottery like this. But again, just want to remind everybody, it's not the best, not the best draft. The Rockets have got a ton of positions taken for the next few years with all these young guys in the rotation, along with Dylan Brooks is going to be back next year and Fred VanVleet. You assume they want to keep those guys. Yeah. So is there a guy out there, Frank, that you would be willing to give up that first round pick for? Is there somebody that you would be willing to give up that first round pick for that maybe has been mentioned in trade talks?
Not right now. I'm not even going to lie to you. And I have thought about that. I don't think we have enough data as a team to make that decision. I would love, that's why it's important for me to see if we can make a play in our playoffs. I think after this full season, going into next season, technically Fred is going to be an expiring next year because his third year is a team option. They might bring him back if they want to, depending on, I think that's going to be relying on Amen Thompson. But if you want to make moves, it's not now. It's going to be next summer when you want to make a decision about Jalen Green, whether you want to pay him or not. So I think it'd be a bit premature to spend picks to bring in a player unless it's Mikal Bridges, because that guy's contract is beautiful. He makes $20 million over the next 15 years. He's one of the best 3-and-D wings. I don't know. People were bashing Mikal Bridges earlier last week. Don't get it twisted. Just because he's being asked to be an engine for a team that doesn't have one doesn't mean he's not still, if slotted as just a wing that guards and shoots threes. He's one of the best in the league at it. Unless it's Mikal Bridges and we're doing business with the Nets, I don't think we're ready to make that decision right now. I think that's something you wait after this summer and see where you guys are at. What does Jalen look like? I think next trade deadline, Robert, that's going to be big for us. Next trade deadline, that's where you kind of get into really hard decisions.
Yeah, Mikal Bridges is going to cost you a lot more than
you're going to have to unload the clip there to get him, but yeah, I would do it. I actually think he fits our team.
Yeah, he's a great value contract, like you said. That's the biggest thing with him is just you got him hooked up at least I think for the next 3 years or something
Yep.
like that. Before we take off, what's the latest on the Chop Shop? What do you got over there?
Just did a video on looking at, one of the games that we had against the Milwaukee Bucks and just reflected on that. One thing, like I said, I just want to emphasize this. Rafael Stone, he's on the clock. Not for his job, but we're waiting to see what he can do as a general manager. We saw what he did with the $60+ million. I don't know if you gave them truth serum, would they say that this is what they envision using all that, having one of the largest cap spaces, having the largest cap space? Is this what they envisioned the team construction would look like? I don't think so. I think they had to pivot to a lot of things and overstretch themselves to accommodate some of the players that they wanted to get. He needs to put together a real roster. The fact that Şengün is this good, this early, is accelerated what we need to see from him. He needs to start, and it starts with this deadline right now. What can you do to build a real team that complements each other, that can compete? Because Coach Udoka is ready. Some of these players are ready. It's on him now. We just got to see it. So I hope he makes the right decisions because I don't think they can punt this season.
And I also have to throw out there before we close out, Jabari Smith made his best decision, made his best statement, I think, maybe as a Rocket this week when he said he's a Texan fan now.
Oh, yeah.
that was the right one, Frank.
Yeah, I mean, after his Hawks were embarrassed, but I guess it's okay. It's better to crawl in late than never, but it's okay.
All right, man. Good to talk to you. We'll talk again soon.
All right, brother.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, don't forget to support us by subscribing and commenting on YouTube. You can always listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends about us and share our show links on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.